I just feel like I've been around the block, ripping up fantasy stock, working around the clock. Look at the view from the top. Researching rookies a lot? No, I just be listening to pods. Yeah, one in particular, I'm just a messenger. Let me just pass on the rock. Browning, Brunning, Bruning, pronouncing ain't what he's doing. What he's doing is not losing, but infusing you with new things. And there's Dennis the Bennett, yeah. The man is a menace, yeah. Building a dynasty, some of the finest things. Promise you, you won't regret it. Sly as a fox, cultured in pop. Give him his props. Here is a thought, here is a box, and you cannot compare them at all. So don't even try. Careful with the news, but when you use a take, I take up Tony Fire. I mean Dyer, because anyone else is a huge mistake. Whoa, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, yeah. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Hey, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, woo. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Go.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Roundtable Podcast. It is Tuesday and we are looking back on a wild week 2 in the NFL. You know, I was 12-4 in picks in week 1. I think I'm 18-13 overall, which tells me I did not fare as well in week 2.
I had a brutal week. I was 7-9 this week, so I'm sitting at a cool 17-15 through 2 weeks.
Well, nowhere to go but up, which is the case for a lot of these teams as well. And a lot of these players, there are a ton of injuries out there. We will be touching on them as we go through each of these games, looking at the teams. We kick off in Dallas, where a battle of week 1 winners turned into a real lopsided affair. The Saints continued to pour it on, scoring 35 points in the first half, winning 44-19 in Dallas. Another big game for Rashid Shaheed. He caught 4 for 96 and a touchdown, also had a couple of carries. 3 for 73 and a touchdown in the first game. Probably would have had more if this game was closer. Dennis, is he an every week start for you now?
You know, so he's very explosive. He's the wide receiver 2 on a pretty prolific offense, but they've been getting up, and so they're running the ball a lot. You know, he's operating at peak efficiency right now. Chris Olave had a 43% target share in week 2. That's not going to go away. Olave is the number 1 there. He's going to be just fine. But yeah, I think you should. There's no, well, I won't say there's no good reasons, because I've got a team where I've alternately benched Terry McLaurin and Drake London. But by and large, you should be starting Rashid Shaheed. He's explosive. He's the deep threat. Olave's got good speed, but he's more of your traditional alpha receiver, I guess, as much as a 190-pound receiver can be. But yeah, man, Rashid Shaheed's just he's making the most out of the opportunities he gets. We saw it last year. He's gonna get past people, and as long as the offensive line is holding up, Derek Carr is going to take some shots. And do I expect him to connect every week? Probably not. That's probably asking a bit much. But as long as they're doing it, you gotta take the risk. It's definitely somebody as your wide receiver 3-4 that you're riding or dying with that cat.
Meanwhile, for the Cowboys, the backfield, I actually watched a good chunk of this game. It was one of the national telecasts. They started Rico Dowdle. They actually brought Deuce Vaughn in second, and then I was wondering if Ezekiel Elliott was dead, and then he showed up in the game. 7 carries for Dowdle, 6 for Elliott, 4 for Deuce Vaughn. They each had their fair share of targets as well. It feels like a committee in Dallas and not one that is yielding much.
So it felt like a committee in Dallas from the moment they signed Zeke Elliott. This is what you get when you're in salary cap hell. You know, you've got to pay CeeDee Lamb, I get it. You got to pay Dak, I got it. You've got to figure out where the money's coming from for Micah Parsons. So something's got to give.
I mean, Dallas could have drafted a running back, though. They had plenty of prime opportunities to get people, and they passed on it. So I think this is almost a hell of their own making.
it's definitely a hell of their own making, because I think Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones thought we can just bring Zeke back. Did you see what he did at the end of last year? If they could have agreed on price, he wouldn't have left Dallas last year.
I just
why am I going to take a pay cut?
I wish they would commit to getting more carries. The one that didn't make sense to me was Deuce Vaughn, and he's just not big enough. They're handing it off to him and having him take like the same kind of Zeke and Rico Dowdle carries up the middle. I think if it was only 2, I'd feel better. But I had hoped Zeke would be good enough to be kind of flex worthy, because we saw that last year. He finished in mid RB3 range, but he's not getting enough volume like this. Now, Cowboys will have games where they're doing better, but even last week, I don't think he would have been that good, except for he fell into the end zone.
Well, and that's what you're going to get from him this year. It's 10, 12 carries, a couple targets, and let's hope he scores. I would be surprised if he breaks 80 yards this season in any given game.
On to a game that kind of it was a good game, but it disappointed both of us, and that was the Detroit Lions hosting Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They fell 20-16. But on the Tampa Bay side, the Saints have started red hot, scoring over 40 points in each of the games. But the Buccaneers won that division the last couple of years. They are also 2-0 and maybe had a more impressive win going into Detroit to get a victory. How good is this Buccaneers team?
They're making timely plays. They're sitting at about an 8-minute deficit in time of possession. And I don't know if their defense is going to be good enough to hold up all season. 12 of 19 for 185 yards and 1 touchdown against a Detroit team that usually is a lot more threatening than they were this week. That's not big in the passing game. On the plus side, I guess 14 of the 19 targets that they put up went to Godwin and Evans. So you got to love a narrow funnel, even in a game where maybe Evans didn't produce like you had hoped.
On the flip side for Detroit, Amon-Ra St. Brown did have a big day, catching 11 for 119, but banged up his knee. They said he avoided any long-term injury, but if he's a little gimpy for a little bit, what do you make of this passing game?
So we're looking at a full-on Jameson Williams breakout.
But beyond Williams, is there anyone you would pick
Tim Patrick, baby. Tim Patrick. Khalif Raymond's going to do what Khalif Raymond does, and I think as they'll get the ball to Sam Laporta a little bit more. They haven't done that a ton so far this year. Jahmyr Gibbs, he'll step into some of that slot role. The Lions don't have a ton of depth at wide receiver, and so if Amon-Ra St. Brown is dinged up a little bit, that's going to present an issue. To throw the ball 55 times and only put up 16 points, that's not great. So especially when you have weapons like Laporta, Gibbs, Amon-Ra, and Jameson Williams.
And Montgomery. Yeah, let's hope they find a little bit more of a sweet spot in Arizona. On to Green Bay, where the Packers got a 16-10 win over the Colts. Dennis, for the second week in a row, we saw a good game out of Alec Pierce, who, I'm sorry, prior to the season, I had been told he was dead. Caught a long touchdown in week 1, 7 targets, 5 for 56, and a touchdown in week 2. Josh Downs was out of the lineup again, but are we feeling it maybe with Alec Pierce? He seems to be developing something here with Richardson.
So it really, I think what it comes down to is he's the number 4 option on that team, and defenses are playing him like he's the number 4 option on that team. And Anthony Richardson is saying, well, he's open, so he's going to him. Pittman's drawn coverage. A.D. Mitchell is, a much more highly regarded player, strong coverage. Jonathan Taylor's getting a ton of attention. Richardson with his legs is getting a ton of attention. And so Alec Pierce is making plays. He took the Josh Downs, A.D. Mitchell threat pretty seriously this year.
Yeah, I mean, it is good news. I'm not completely banking on it yet. Josh Downs is tracking toward starting this next week, or not starting, being healthy and available to play. I'll be curious to see how this changes a little bit. For the Packers, Malik Willis got the start, probably going to be in line for a couple of more starts. You had thought he looked good in the preseason. I told you I wasn't 100% sure how that would translate, especially with a new team, but they gave him some safe throws, but 12 of 14, 122 yards, and a touchdown, carried it 6 times for 41 yards. Looked like a little bit of a different player than what we saw when they sacrificed him on the altar of the Titans for Mike Vrabel. How are you feeling about Willis?
So I'm not selling the farm for him, that's for sure. They did all they could to hide him. They threw the ball just 14 times. They relied on their defense to make plays. Josh Jacobs ran the ball 32 times. They had, outside of Willis, they had 5 different people carry the ball. Bo Melton, Emmanuel Wilson, Marshawn Lloyd, Jaden Reed.
Don't have to worry about Marshawn Lloyd anymore because he one game and he went on IR again.
So but we see the game plan there. They're going to try to protect Willis. Willis had decent stats in training camp, in exhibition season. We get it. They're playing vanilla offenses, but you want to see them do the things they're supposed to do. He's not at a point where he's going to put a team on his back, and he isn't going to lead a drive like Kirk Cousins did last night. There's not one of those. I don't think we're there yet with him. But in his defense, he completed 12 passes. He had completions of 14, 17, and 39 yards. So it isn't like everything was Bo Nixon at the line of scrimmage.
No, it was definitely better than I was expecting. The New York Jets went into Tennessee, second straight road game. This time they get the 24-17 victory. Dennis, kind of a coming out party for Braylon Allen. Yes, Breece Hall is the primary running back, had the most carries and most rushing yards, also had a lot of receptions, but Braylon Allen was there, 7 carries, 33 yards and a touchdown. Also caught 2 passes for 23 yards and a touchdown. This is a Jets team where beyond Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall, there's opening for an identity. It was 2 touchdowns to Lazard in week 1, 2 to Allen here in week 2. Do you think Allen could have some deep league flex appeal?
In deep leagues, I think so. If he's going to get 8 to 11 opportunities a game, if you watched him in college, he can run the ball. He's young. He's 20 years old. He's big. He's 230 pounds. He's got pretty good speed. And despite coming out of Wisconsin, he seems to be a decent enough pass catcher. So he brings a lot to the table. A lot of analysts liked him coming out last year. This year, what we hated was him landing in New York behind Breece Hall. It was very much the inverse of the Tyler Algier situation. He's got himself set up, though. He's earned Aaron Rodgers' trust. As long as he can keep up in the pass protection, he's going to spell Breece Hall. He's going to get 6 or 8 opportunities a game. And if he's rolling well, they may leave him in for a whole series. If he's looking good, I don't know. He feels more like a bye week. I'm out of players. I've just lost CMC, Debo, Puka Nacua. I got to have a body kind of player at this point in the season, but give it a few weeks. And if we see him getting consistent opportunity, then, he's better than a 0. He's going to get you 3 or 4 points, maybe 6 points. Maybe he gets into the end zone and boost your week that way. I just think that Breece Hall is going to be such a workhorse back that there isn't always going to be 7 carries and
I do think he could be a sneaky play in this week because it's a short week. And usually coming on a short week when you have guys, Breece Hall has seen quite a few touches the first 2 weeks. Coming into a short week, they may break it up a little bit more.
Well, but he did have 22 opportunities this week, but only 14 carries. So, he's catching the ball on the outside, getting out of bounds a little bit, and the hits ain't quite as heavy.
Speaking of not a lot of opportunity, DeAndre Hopkins coming into this year, knew he's going to have more competition. He's coming off that knee injury, but only 3 targets, 2 receptions for 17 yards in 2 games. Concerning?
I don't know if it's concerning. What were the real expectations? I forgot to pull up what our
probably more than 3 targets in 2 games.
Well, I know, but where did we have? Let me see.
I mean, I thought he'd be like a wide receiver 4. I thought he was going to miss games with the knee injury. Being healthy enough to play and still not warranting any targets, I find a little bit alarming.
Yeah, so you had him at wide receiver 48, and I had him at wide receiver 40. So we were in the wide receiver 4s. I still think there's opportunity there for him to get that. But Calvin Ridley looks fast. He looks sharp. Tyler Boyd is consistent. And Tony Pollard has looked real good. He's been the hot one the first couple of weeks, and he's been taking the touches away from Tyjae Spears. So for me, I'm not going to sweat it a ton. He only played 27% of the snaps in week 1, had 24% of the routes run, played 44% of the snaps last week with 51% of the routes run. I think the targets are going to come. He's going to work his way back up. I think that Ridley's the wide receiver 1 on that team now. But I do feel like Hopkins will have some Adam Thielen type viability where he may not get you a ton of yards, but he'll have some touchdown opportunities and some 6, 8, 10 catch kind of weeks where he doesn't, where he averages 7 to 9, 10 yards a catch. But
on to Minnesota, where the Vikings got the 23-17 victory over the San Francisco 49ers. Dennis, the 49ers were already without Christian McCaffrey. Now it looks like they're going to be missing Deebo Samuel for a couple of weeks. What does that do to their offense?
Well, it's great news for Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle. It narrows the funnel down. I think as long as Jordan Mason can keep being productive, another game, 20 carries, 100 yards, and a touchdown. Isaac Guerrero didn't get much run. He had 1 carry. So I would expect a little more work out of Guerrero. Maybe Kyle Juszczyk catches a few more passes, but it's going to really be Kittle, Ayuk, and then it's time for Juwan Jennings to stand up. And when given an opportunity to be the wide receiver 3 and make plays, Jennings has performed in that role. I'm not sure if he's got what it takes to really step up and be some sort of a volume receiver, but we're going to have to find out if Ayuk if Deebo is going to be out for 3 or 4 weeks.
For the Minnesota Vikings, Sam Darnold, 2 weeks, he's looked pretty good. More than 200 yards passing in each of the first 2 games, which is not something every quarterback can say, and 2 touchdowns in each of the first 2 games. More importantly, 2 victories. How are you feeling about Sam Darnold?
Man, I'm not going to lie. I was kind of impressed. I was nervous about him going against that defensive line and those linebackers that they have there in San Francisco. But he held up well. What did they get him for? 1, 2, 3, 4 sacks, which you wouldn't want that every game. But if you're going against a team like San Francisco, it could have been a lot worse. So Darnold is doing what he's supposed to. He's getting the ball to Justin Jefferson. They only threw it 26 times, so there was a little bit of I don't want to say hiding him, but they ran it 19 times, not including Darnold's 5 scrambles. So it was they had almost 9 minutes deficit in time of possession versus San Francisco. Brian Flores had that defense playing great and was able to keep the San Francisco 49ers from putting up a lot of points. And if you can keep it close at the end there, you got a puncher's chance.
On to New England, where the Seahawks get the 23-20 win in overtime. Dennis, we've waited for this for a while, but Jackson Smith-Njigba 16 targets, caught 12 passes for 117 yards, averaged 9.8 yards per reception, which was a hell of a lot better than the ADOT we were seeing last year. Is this the breakout we have been waiting to see?
I think it is, but we have to be careful because next week him and Tyler Lockett could flip again. I'm a little optimistic because Zach Charbonnet and his 2.7 yards per carry didn't really fulfill the Ken Walker role. He was 5 for 5 for 31 yards in the passing game, so that wasn't too bad. But Ken Walker is just so much of a better runner. Now they were going against the Patriots, who have a pretty stout defense, and so maybe that's part of it. But the potential is there if Walker's banged up again, that they focus more on the passing game. They go more with the Ryan Grubb, University of Washington offense, where they're chucking it down the field like he did last year in college. I don't want to write off that this was a fluke, but I also am not going to write off Tyler Lockett. So 16 targets, 30 targets between Metcalf and Njigba. That's a pretty narrow funnel. I don't expect it to be quite that concentrated on a regular basis. I think it'll be spread out a little bit more.
Jake Bobo got his 2 targets too, and three there for Noah Fant. I was told Noah Fant was going to have a breakout.
Shenault even got a target.
On the flip side for New England, another pretty sturdy game. They were in this obviously right to the end. Their offense still pretty conservative, only 149 yards passing. Of that, 8 for 109 on 12 targets to Hunter Henry, who really just dominated everything. Antonio Gibson and Ramondre Stevenson making a nice tandem on the ground. What do you think of this Patriots offense so far?
Well, talk about a tight end premium, huh? Yeah.
You thought he could have a good game. If they're gonna hammer him like that, then he will go back to being in range.
Yeah, Henry he's a good tight end. He isn't super athletic, but he's athletic enough, and he still has enough speed to get open in that short area, and he's good at the catch point. Right now, Brissett's got, he's a low ADOT quarterback, not as low as Bryce Young, but he isn't chucking it down the field. Though he did have a nice little touchdown to Jalen Polk, though it was only a 7-yarder or 5-yarder, something like that. But Henry is, as long as they're gonna have a target distribution where they're only throwing the ball to the wide receivers 5 times on 27 attempts, Henry is a high-end tight end. Right now, that passing game runs through Hunter Henry, and as long as Ramondre Stevenson is bullying them on the ground, and Antonio Gibson actually broke off a 45-yarder and looked like he knew what he was doing in the running game, which we're not used to seeing. If that running game is going to be productive like that, and they're going to be in games, I'm not sure that we're going to see a lot more adventurous offense where they're going to stick with what's getting them there, and that's Hunter Henry.
Next, we go to Washington, where the Commanders got the peculiar 21-18 victory over the Giants. The Giants had their kicker get injured right off the bat, so they scored 3 touchdowns, but no extra points, only getting 18. Could not kick. But Daniel Jones, horrendous week 1 against a softer Washington defense, 16-28, 178 yards, 2 touchdowns, did connect with Malik Neighbors, targeted him 18 times, clearly had a focus. Neighbors getting 10 for 127 and a touchdown, his other touchdown going to Wan'Dale Robinson. Did Daniel Jones answer any questions for you?
Yeah, he's at best a bye week fill in super flex leagues, and in one QB leagues, he's probably not rosterable yet. He did 32 yards on the ground, and that helps. 2 touchdowns through the air. It's good that he didn't turn the ball over, but the completion percentage was a little bit low. But man, he's got to be able to convert those 2-point attempts. It's just, you can't go 0 for 3 on 2-point conversions, especially when you're as mobile as he is, and you've got. They didn't even throw the ball to the tight ends. So between Bellinger and Theo Johnson, and I don't know who the hell else they have there, but
he had a real narrow funnel. He only targeted Neighbors, Slayton, Robinson, and got 1 out to Singletary. So it was pretty focused.
Now, my fantasy football roundtable redraft team, the Won't You Be My Neighbors team, I'm okay if he's targeting Malik Neighbors 18 times, but I don't know that that's a winning proposition for Daniel Jones and the Giants all season long.
Meanwhile, Washington, no touchdowns, but did manage 7 field goals. Led them on the ground, this time getting 133 yards on 17 carries, got a reception in there as well. How are you feeling about Brian Robinson?
Feeling better each week. He looks good. I thought last year and in preseason, it looked like Chris Rodriguez was going to hold on to, some sort of role, but he didn't make it out of camp.
He didn't even hold on to the team.
Yeah, Dan Quinn just said, he listened to all the fantasy analysts from last year and decided that we were right on Chris Rodriguez. But Robinson's looking pretty good. He's getting what's there. He's making the occasional explosive play. What I really want Cliff Kingsbury to explain is how a route technician like Terry McLaurin with 4.3 speed catches 6 passes for just 22 yards in 2 games.
He's on the JSN target plan.
It's less than that. It's like he's throwing it backwards just about. It's terrible. He's just, I get it. McLaurin had 8 targets and he caught 6. That's a great conversion rate, but for 22 yards, the dude's got 4.3 speed. Why is he?
Hopefully they'll figure it out. They did get Jaden Daniels to seemingly run less, but it definitely made him less appealing for fantasy because no rookie quarterback has thrown a touchdown pass in 2 weeks. So we shall see how that goes going forward. On to Carolina. The Panthers barely showed up, losing 26-3 at home to the Chargers. Quentin Johnson was kind of a bust as a rookie, but 5 receptions, 51 yards, 2 touchdowns. On Sunday, had 3 for 38. The first week seems to be coming around. How are you feeling about QJ now?
Dude, the 1 touchdown was downfield. It wasn't like his skill set is that close to the line of scrimmage run after the catch. Last year, they tried to make him into Mike Williams, and that just isn't what he's good at. But he did catch the ball downfield on the touchdown pass. I think Jim Harbaugh is, Harbaugh played against him in the college football playoffs 2 years ago. And so Harbaugh has seen up close and personal what he can do and seems to go, well, I get what his skill set is, so I'm going to have him do that kind of stuff. And it's working. So Is it going to be like, he's probably a wide receiver 3 is what he probably is. That's probably his ceiling. But right now, man, you just kind of got to go along with it. 5 catches on 6 targets, 51 yards. I don't think the touchdown rate is sustainable.
No, he won't always get touchdowns like that.
But they had what was the score of that game again? It was
26-3.
44 runs to 20 passes in that. That's an absurd run pass ratio.
It's not that far off from what they did in week 1 either, though. For Carolina, meanwhile, Bryce Young, 18 of 26, 84 yards, no touchdowns, 1 interception, 2 sacks, 1 carry for 6 yards. They came out yesterday and declared that he has been benched for Andy Dalton. What do you think about this move? I'll be honest. They hired a QB whisperer in Dave Canales, and the fact that they have given up on Bryce Young after 2 games, albeit 2 very poor games, does not speak too strongly to me about the Carolina organization.
So we see often new regimes come in and they're saddled with the old regime's quarterback and they try to play nice. And the other side of that coin is that quarterback's got to give you something to play with. And to be fair, Young hasn't done that through 2 games. He had a good completion percentage, but he only threw for 84 yards. He's a little he's skinny Kyler Murray. And I don't know if his confidence is just shot after last year. And I don't know that Andy Dalton is the answer. But Dalton came in last year, and where'd it go? And threw the ball 55 times in his game. Let's see. I don't remember. I don't think they won it.
No, he didn't win.
Yeah, they lost 37-27, but they put up 27 points, which they hadn't been doing. And he had 9 targets to Miles Sanders last year. Or no, that was carries. He had 14 targets to Adam Thielen, 11 to DJ Chark, 8 to Terrace Marshall. Oh, he did target Miles Sanders 9 times. So I'm expecting Dalton to come in this year and get the ball to Leggett and get the ball to Thielen and Mingo and especially Deontay Johnson, and then see what Chuba had a 6.4 yard per carry average in that game. But let's face it, they were playing soft because they weren't getting first downs.
I just the whole narrative being that their season's slipping away and Canales' job is on the line. If his job is on the line after 2 games, you already knew you had a shitty team. You had a team that got the number 1 overall pick, but had already traded away. Frank Reich got fired because he couldn't develop Bryce Young, and supposedly they were looking for somebody to develop Bryce Young, and they hired the QB whisperer. And to me, after 2 games, this is as much a failure on Dave Canales as it is on Bryce Young. He looks worse than he did last year after investing that line that they invested $100 million in. Looks worse than it did last year. So I don't really. I just think
in run
this
blockers.
is a terrible team, and they're going to get what they get for the next 20 years. The way they're going, they need a new owner.
Well, I don't disagree about them needing a new owner, but I don't think that Bryce Young is terribly good. And
maybe not, but there were no expectations for Carolina this year. So to make this change after 2 weeks, we're not talking about it's been 10 weeks. We know now we're not. You made no effort week to week to fix any of the other structural problems on your team, and you have no defense to speak of whatsoever. So,
they're
blessings
bad
on you. I hope they don't win a single game because I think this is just terrible management. And this isn't even, I don't think Bryce Young is good. I don't want to play him in fantasy. Andy Dalton will probably be a better fantasy asset, but Andy Dalton is not the future of your team. And what are you going to do what you did a couple of years ago and play just so middling that you end up with a medium draft pick? Are you going back to the quarterback? Well, you still haven't even paid off the trade for Bryce Young, and you've already screwed him. He'll never be able to go back in for you. I don't think he'll be able to go back in for anybody at this point in time. It's just, this is the mark of a horrendously run franchise, and I should know because Denver is a horrendously run franchise, but Denver looks like the mid 2000s New England Patriots compared to the shit that's going on in Carolina. This is an embarrassment.
Yeah, I mean they're averaging a 13-minute deficit in time of possession, so they're not getting first downs. They're not holding the ball. At some point, I don't know how long you wait if you believe that it's not going to happen because he's playing.
Well, I just think a lot less of Dave Canales now if he's bailing out after 2 games. He got so much praise and credit for helping to turn around Gino and helping to turn around Baker, and that's what helped him get this job. There's nothing to turn around with Andy Dalton. He is what he is. He's at the tail end of his career. Nobody thought Carolina was going to be good. So this whole, they didn't look good the first 2 weeks. They didn't win games. Well, no one really thought they were winning games unless David Tepper thought they were winning games, because nobody that looked at that roster was like, they're going to win some games. So on to teams that may or may not win games. Down in Jacksonville, the Jaguars fall to the Browns 18-13 to fall to 0-2. For the Browns, passing game looked a little bit better than week 1, unless you were playing Amari Cooper, who had 3 for 11. He has 5 receptions for 27 yards this season so far. The good news, if you were looking for some, would be that he's gotten 17 targets, but are you getting a little concerned?
Yeah, he's got the dropsies a little bit. And so, the opportunity's there, and I think the production's going to come. But, when you're getting the ball thrown to you, you got to bring him in. Watson played a decent game. He didn't have a high yards per attempt or yards per completion, but he had a good completion percentage. And is this the start of the turnaround? They got up, and then they brought in D'Onta Foreman to kind of grind out some yards on the ground and just sort of salt it away a little bit. So, they were playing without David Njoku, who is a pretty good weapon. They haven't had Chubb. The defense is playing okay, but they need the offense to put up more points. I'm a little nervous if I'm a Jacksonville guy. Muted.
For the Jaguars, pregame, Evan Ingram tweaked his hamstring, was a surprise inactive, which was a real blow for fantasy. But Brenton Strange coming in, 6 targets, got 3 passes for 65 yards. Hamstring injuries can tend to be multi-week, especially late crop-up ones like what Ingram had. How are you feeling about Strange?
So he's a decently athletic tight end. He's not a Kyle Pitts athlete, but he also
Kyle Pitts hasn't been doing anything either, so maybe that's not a plus.
But he's been kind of a stash and hold kind of taxi squad guy behind Ingram. It's like let's wait, give him a couple years to kind of fully develop as an NFL tight end. We know that tight end is one of the slowest developing positions in football because you have to learn all the blocking schemes. Then you have to learn the routes. You have to kind of know what's going on all around the team. And so you just kind of wait it out. He was, they drafted him that, wasn't super high draft capital. But he's made plays here and there when given an opportunity. I think if, for whatever reason, if Ingram was done, I think Strange could slide into the starting tight end and be one of those, 10 to 20 tight end 10 to tight end 20 guys, in any given week or any given season.
On to Baltimore, which was one of the shocking results of the day. The Raiders come in and get the 26-23 victory. Dennis, Gardner Minshew not getting a lot of run support in either of the first 2 games, was very close in the game with the Chargers for quite a while until they kind of put it away at the end. 30 of 38, 276 yards passing, a TD, and INT, makes the most of Davante Adams and Brock Bowers. Do you like what he's doing with this team?
So, classic case of he knows what the job is. The job is to throw the ball to Davante Adams and Brock Bowers. After that, it's like, okay, well, now we can get a little squirrely. Zamir White isn't producing yet. He had a great run at the end of last year, off to a slow start this year. Alexander Madison vultures the tight end or touchdown. Jacoby Myers caught 4 passes, had 5 targets. Zamir White had 4 targets, caught 3. But Adams, 9 catches for 110 yards and a touchdown. You'll take it. Brock Bowers, 9 for 98. You're going to take it. He knows what the job is. He's going to do it. There's going to be some good weeks and there's going to be some bad weeks with Gardner Minshew. And I think you just got to kind of be ready for it. He's a high-end QB2 that will likely settle in as a low-end QB2 by the end of the season. I mean, we had him ranked as QB 34. You had him at 37. And that's because I think
we thought we'd see some Aiden O'Connell.
Yeah, and to be fair, there's still lots of time. We may very well see some Aiden O'Connell. I mean, let's face it, if Minshew could hold a job, he'd be in Jacksonville or he'd be in Indianapolis.
Well, I mean, he did look good when he was in Indianapolis, helped guide that team to being 9-8. So for the Ravens, now 0-2, going on the road to Dallas. They had a lead in this one and just let it slip away, seemingly forgetting that they have one of the greatest closers of all time in Derrick Henry on their team and only giving him 18 carries. What do you make of this Ravens offense?
I think they're searching for an identity because they have Derrick Henry. I think there's a cognitive dissonance that says, this is how we play football. But wait, we have Derrick Henry. Yeah, but this is how we play football. But wait, we have Derrick Henry. And so that cognitive dissonance pops up. And so then they try to we're going to run the ball with Derrick. We got Derrick Henry. We got to run the ball. Well, wait, but we're really an RPO team that's going to get the ball downfield, to Mark Andrews and to Zay Flowers, and Lamar's going to run it. Oh, but wait, we got Derrick Henry. We need to get the ball to Derrick Henry. So I think they're having a little bit of an identity crisis. They need to get back to getting the ball to Mark Andrews. He's playing a lot more, running a lot more routes than Isaiah Likely. I get that people chased Isaiah Likely's points from week 1 and were highly disappointed in week 2. But they missed a field goal, and they had 2 fourth quarter 3-and-outs. And while the defense gave up 3 scoring drives in that time. So they have to kind of pull it together. Whether it's Harbaugh, whether it's Monken, whatever it is, they've got to figure it out and figure it out fast.
On to Denver, where of all the games played this weekend, this was one of them. The Pittsburgh Steelers getting a 13-6 victory against the Broncos. This was tough to watch, and not just because I hate watching my team. For the Steelers, Justin Fields now 2-0 as a starter. Not eye-popping numbers, 13 of 20 for 117 yards and a touchdown, carried 8 times for 27 yards. But this team is doing enough with good defense to win. They host the Chargers in week 3. Would you keep rolling with Fields?
I mean, what kind of upgrade do you think Russell Wilson's going to be?
Is Russell Wilson going to be an upgrade? Who knows?
So it's one of those situations where, yeah, we brought Russell in and we felt like he could be the guy, but then we had a chance to get Justin, and we still felt like we were going to have Russell be the guy, and we want to see what we have going on with Justin. And Justin Fields is the quarterback that he is. Arthur Smith is game planning well for what this team's strengths are. I know if George Pickens is going to start getting whiny if he's only getting 4 targets a game, but Justin throwing the ball 20, 22 times.
That was kind of the deceptive thing. Pickens had not only a couple of passes that got called back for penalty, but he had a couple of deep bombs that resulted in penalties. So I think that's what, when I was watching the game, I thought Fields was playing better than when I looked at the stat line. I was like, oh,
right.
And I think it's because of some of the sloppy play.
Yeah, I want Fields to get a legitimate opportunity to be developed. I don't think the Bears did that.
I'm not sure Arthur Smith is the man for that either.
I don't know that he is either, but he's got two big running backs in Harris and Warren and Cordero Patterson, three really, that he's able to offset, and he put Pickens in he's putting Fields in position to make plays and not do things that he can't do. So, I know after week 1, the chatter was, Pickens can't throw over the middle. Everything was to the outside. And after about 3 days of chatter, then Arthur Smith come out and said, he didn't throw over the middle because I didn't call plays for him to throw over the middle. That was the game plan wasn't for Justin to throw over the middle of the field. And, we know going back to Tennessee that Arthur Smith, he don't mind winning ugly. That's just
neither does Tomlin. So that's where I almost feel like if the Steelers were 0-2, then and Russell's healthy, then you make a change. But I think as long as they're winning, I think there's a decent chance, even as well as the Chargers have looked, that they can win week 3 at home against the Chargers too. That's going to be 2 defenses, 2 strong running games. Justin Herbert's already banged up. I might actually prefer Fields because if need be, he could take off and run away from Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa.
So yeah, it's not going to be like super productive for fantasy right now. It's RB2s and 3s, wide receivers 3, 4, 5, but as I want my team to win fan, he's getting it done.
Next for the Broncos, Josh Reynolds, 4 receptions for 93 yards. Week 1, he had 5 for 45. Are you buying into Reynolds as a flex option?
Reynolds is like the wide receiver 2.5 on a team. Like, he's not quite good enough to be your second, but he flashes just enough as your third that you want to give him more opportunities.
He's Denver's wide receiver 1. To be honest,
for fantasy, he's a flex play. And even in Detroit last year with Jared Goff, I think a flex play was the move with Josh Reynolds. He'll give you some games where he makes you think, man, if this dude just gets more opportunities, he's gonna put up some fantasy points. But then he'll completely just disappear. So
on to Arizona, where the Rams came into town and left 41-10 losers. They also lost Cooper Kupp, who is expected to miss some time. Now, no Puka Nacua, who's on IR. Kupp may also end up on IR, but is at least expected to be out for a couple weeks. How do you feel about this offense? They are getting ready to host the 49ers.
So I got to be honest. I am less concerned about them losing Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua than I am about them losing 3/5 of their starting offensive line.
Yeah, that's grim as well. The Rams went from a team that some people had in the Super Bowl to a team that, I think it's going to be a struggle to get to 500.
I've heard a little bit of chatter that people are like, hey, if you got Matthew Stafford, you need to look at a backup option because this team's falling apart. And we've seen it with Sean McVay before. When the team falls apart, he shuts down the good guys. And, Stafford might get a little ouchy and it'd be like, let's go take 6 games off. We don't need to keep you getting hit out there.
Stetson Bennett era is here. Or I guess they have Jimmy G. They only need
got Garoppolo now going into week 3. Yep.
I thought he was suspended for 4 games. Was it only 2 games?
It was 2.
Okay.
But who knows?
That's what everyone wants to see Jimmy G string out there, throwing it to Tyler Johnson and Demarcus Robinson.
Don't forget Jordan Whittington.
Tutu Atwell.
I think that, to me, Jordan Whittington is the next man up in the slot. So if Puka and Cooper are out, then Whittington's he's the guy that's going to fall into that role. Whether he accomplishes anything with it, this is the chance to see, does McVay's slot guy, is it like Shanahan running backs? Does it really matter who it is? It's going to be productive. So if Whittington goes out there and starts getting 10 to 12 targets and producing, then by all means, I'm going to be like, yeah, I guess it is like the Shanahan running backs. But, Demarcus Robinson and Tyler Johnson, I think they're going to be serviceable on the outside. It'll come down to, will Kyren Williams stay healthy? And if he doesn't, does Blake Corum take over and be able to produce? Because really they're riding Kyren right now. So, I guess Corum did have 8 carries now that I look up at the stats.
I think it's because it was a blowout and he finally took some of his good players out.
Yeah.
On the other side, a lot of hand wringing after week 1 where Marvin Harrison had a catch for 4 yards. He had 4 for 130 and 2 touchdowns in this game. Are you feeling better about him?
Man, that first touchdown was beautiful. Just toe tapping at the back of the end zone over the shoulder. My concern is that he basically had 3 catches in the first quarter with 2 touchdowns, and then he only had 1 catch the rest of the way. Ended up with 8 targets. It got a little bit quiet. Maybe some of that was because they were out to such a lead. Yep. McBride had a good game, 6 for 6 for 67. Those are the guys that you want to see getting production. But yeah, Harrison, he showed his speed on that second touchdown. As in, it's kind of DeAndre Hopkins-ish speed. He needs a run and start to keep a lead. Is what I'm saying.
On to Kansas City, where the Chiefs got a walk-off field goal victory, 26-25 over the Bengals. Not a lot seemingly going right for the Bengals personality-wise, but Mike Gesicki, last week he had a big touchdown that they took away, and the NFL, in true NFL fashion, in the middle of the week said, we should have. Our bad. He really caught that touchdown. Well, he had 9 targets to pace the team, 7 receptions for 91 yards on Sunday. Do you like him at the tight end position?
So he's not leading the tight ends in snaps. But what it seems like is that Zach Taylor says, hey, I've got a guy that's 6'6" and weighs 240 pounds that runs about a 4.55. I bet I can make him into a mismatch without T. Higgins and, with a piss poor running game. To me, it looks like he's one of those players that if you're starting him, you don't want to watch the game because it's going to be one of those, why isn't he in there? Why isn't he getting the ball? Oh my God, what did I do? And then you get to the end of the game and he's got 6 targets and 5 catches, 65 yards and a touchdown, or 4 catches on 8 targets with 70 yards. And, it's going to be one of those games where it's frustrating because, part of the reason Miami was so happy to get rid of him is because he can't block for shit. And they're like, we can't keep you on the field because we've got these other guys catch the ball that are like, that's really what their job is. For you to be out there, you got to do some of this other stuff. And he just couldn't or wouldn't, whatever it is. But Cincinnati's got a couple of tight ends that'll get in there and mix it up and allow him to play that flex tight end, that slot tight end, and be a mismatch for the defense. And Zach Taylor's okay using him in that role. So would I be thrilled to, keep rolling him out there? I don't know. It's going to make me nervous because, you're going to have some weeks where it's 1 catch for 7 yards.
Meanwhile, Isaiah Pacheco had a pretty good game, but came out of that game with a fractured fibula. He is going to IR. Will miss at least 4 games, but they're suggesting at least 6 to 8, which would make sense for a running back who broke his leg. Carson Steele and Samaje Perine, the immediate help there. They put Kareem Hunt on their practice squad. What are you doing with that backfield?
Starting Rashee Rice.
Yep. I'd like to start Travis Kelce, but Lord knows he's not doing shit either.
You know, it seems like that post contract. You know, you see guys a lot of times after they play really great and they get a fat contract, and then they kind of fade away. I don't know. You know, Kelsey's getting old. Maybe we were so enamored with what he's done historically that we just didn't see the decline. I think he'll get back on track.
I hope so.
Got to start getting him more targets though.
Yeah.
Mahomes, but that's the thing with Mahomes. We've seen it with the wide receivers that Mahomes, he doesn't care who it is. You just got to be open. And right now, it's Rashee Rice that's getting open.
I think if I did have to pick somebody out of that backfield, I'm leaning toward Carson Steele because they trusted him enough to have him in there on their game-winning drive.
Yeah, probably, you know, but P. Ryan came in a little bit later in camp. Steele's been there all since the draft process, so he probably knows the full offense a little bit better. Now, Steele flashed a little bit in training camp, though to hear people talk, he's awful. I don't think he certainly didn't look as bad as Clyde Edwards-Helaire, but will it surprise you one bit if by midway of the second quarter next week, Kareem Hunt's dominating snaps?
Yes, that actually would surprise me greatly. I think Kareem Hunt's pretty washed. But they only have to weather 2 more weeks, and then CEH would be eligible to come back off of NFI, so we'll see if that pans out for him. Sunday Night Football, Chicago went into Houston. It was a pretty tight and competitive game, but the Texans get a 19-13 victory. Caleb Williams did throw for 174 yards, which is quite a bit more than his 93 yards from the opener. Threw 2 interceptions, no touchdowns. This offense, they couldn't really run that well. Don't have the pass offense I think we thought they were going to have. What does Chicago need to kind of get this offense going?
Some interior offensive linemen.
Maybe.
So we know rookie quarterbacks have to go through a learning curve. One of those interceptions that we saw Williams throw is a play he turned into touchdowns a dozen times in college, probably. Well, you're playing against better players, and you just, you know, he threw it into triple coverage and slightly underthrew it. I think he's going to be fine. He's growing, 23 of 37. You know, you'd like to see a little higher completion percentage. 10 targets to DJ Moore. You want to see that. Keenan Allen was out. DeAndre Swift had 5 targets. Didn't do a whole heck of a lot with them. But the running game, aside from Williams, was not productive. So they need to get some balance to the offense to take the pressure off the rookie and thinking that, hey, I've got to carry this team. You know, CJ Stroud is the exception. And it's easy to look at some of these guys that have come in and played well and think, oh, well, my guy I draft can do it too. It's okay to have growing pains. And I get it. You drafted him number 1 overall. And so you can't really sit him down for a year or a half a year and start Tyson Bagent. But maybe maybe teams should look a little harder at having a better quarterback to allow these rookies to develop a little bit before just throwing them out there.
Meanwhile, for the Texans, Joe Mixon got rolled up on. He's questionable. It hasn't been ruled out, but it's very tentative. If he was to miss time, what would you make of the backfield? Dameon Pierce was out last week, could have a chance to be back this week. Cam Akers kind of spelled him, 7 carries, 32 yards, fumble the ball. Dario Gunbowale seems to be locking down that kind of third down back. But what would you make of this backfield if they miss time with Mixon?
Well, I would hope that Cam Akers is ready to go. I like Dameon Pierce in a different style offense. And while Pierce has looked better in this offense this year, he still doesn't feel like he's a natural fit for it. Cam Akers is more suited to running that zone blocking offense, and I think he would just naturally be more productive. But we also know that Akers has awful vision as well. So I think if Akers' vision is probably offset by Pierce's lack of instincts in that blocking scheme. So you want to roll out whichever one's healthy. And this week it's going to be Akers. Pierce has come a little bit banged up.
On to Monday Night Football, where the Falcons came in and had a game-winning drive of their own to get the 22-21 victory over the Philadelphia Eagles. Dennis Darnell Mooney still seeing targets, doing some good things. Drake London saw 7 targets, doing some good things. But Kyle Pitts, only 3 catches for 20 yards. He only had 3 catches for 26 yards in the opener, got a touchdown, which helped kind of bail him out. But we came through the offseason thinking it was going to be kind of Drake London and Kyle Pitts finally unleashed. We're starting to see some of it with London. Are you worried a little bit about Pitts? Do you think we need to moderate our expectations?
I'm not worried about it just yet. I mean, Pitts played 100% of the snaps, or 96% of the snaps in week 1, and was 100% route participation. Played 74% of the snaps this week, with 74% route participation. No other tight ends are getting targets, but Bijan had 5 targets. Ray McLeod had 5. The aforementioned Mooney had 7. It's there. He threw the ball 29 times, he being Cousins, and completed 20 passes. The volume's going to be there. Pitts is on the field. It's going to be okay. I'm still happy to go buy Kyle Pitts. Like if people are panicking and they want to sell and I could get him for, Evan Ingram. They're like, oh, when Ingram gets back healthy next week, he's going to dominate, whatnot. I'd sell Ingram for Pitts. But I'm not getting too worked up about it just yet.
Meanwhile, for the Eagles, A.J. Brown got ruled out on Saturday. It was nice that they did it a little bit earlier, but he basically told the sideline crew on Monday night he expects to miss more than 1 week. Devonta Smith led them 7 for 76 and a touchdown. They also have Saquon Barkley, but who steps up in the passing game without A.J. Brown?
I mean, do you think, is that one of those Jordan Mason, they told me on Friday I was starting football?
I mean, the Eagles ruled him out when he had it crop up on Saturday. I don't have a problem with that with Monday night. And he's the one that said, I'm not going to be good enough to go. So, I think that's a little more forthcoming than, as we've seen in McCaffrey's arc, there was obviously a lot more smoke to that fire than we were led to believe.
So with A.J. Brown out, it was easy to lean into Devonta Smith is going to get a whole bunch. I did not see Britton Covey coming.
That's only 6 for 23. I mean, he was on the
Terry
McLaurin track, or the 5 receptions for 1 yard for Julian McLaughlin in week 1. Yeah.
But so Barkley had 5 targets. We saw Grant Calcaterra with a couple targets, couple catches. Dallas Goedert 3 for 4 for 38. So it looks like in lieu of A.J. Brown being in there with Devonta Smith, they're going to spread the ball around a little bit more. And it's going to be hard to maybe nail who is going to be, because it's going to come down to, I think you're okay with Goddard. The tight end landscape is what the tight end landscape is. But getting to figure out which is it going to be Calcaterra that steps up? Is it going to be Covey? Who's going to get in the end zone? Will it be Johnny Wilson? He had an end zone target. So it'll really, or will they just give the ball to Barkley more?
I mean, or it seemed like one of the other things that they did on, they did a lot more RPOs, and that led to Hurts running a lot more. because he had 13 for 85 and a touchdown there. So, yeah, I still like Devonta Smith. I don't know if there is any of the other. The one surprise is I thought we were going to see some more Jahan Dotson, and
we
he
saw
got
a lot of
involved
Jahan
one
Dotson.
early.
He played 79% of the snaps. They just didn't throw him the ball.
Yeah, he got one target early, and I thought, well, this is what I expect they're going to get. But all the shots to Covey and Calcaterra, and I made a joke at some point in time that Kellen Moore must have Grant Calcaterra and Britton Covey on his fantasy team because early in the going, you hadn't had any targets to Devonta Smith, and they had already had Calcaterra. He had 2 receptions. I'm like, God. So we'll see how it works out. Philly has I can't remember who their week 3 game is against New Orleans, so that could be quite a shootout. Before we get out of here, we will talk about the Thursday night football matchup. New York Jets finally getting a home game. They return home in week 3 to host the New England Patriots. Dennis, your man Hunter Henry, 12 targets, caught 8 passes in week 2. Do you like rolling him out at tight end in this week 3?
I think you have to. I think he's tight end. He's tight end 4 on the season. Feels like the closest thing to a sure thing on the Patriots. And 43% of New England's targets have gone to tight ends through 2 games. And I get that they, that they have Ramondre Stevenson and they've got Antonio Gibson, but that until that wide receiver group establishes somebody as a legitimate actual threat, it's going to be the receiving game is going to run through Hunter Henry nonstop.
Yeah, I mean, he's looked pretty good. I think he's probably someone I would consider. On the Jets side, we're playing Garrett Wilson, we're playing Breece Hall. I mentioned in their 2 games, we saw one big Allen Lazard game, we saw one big Braylon Allen game. Do you like either of them? You would like to say in week 3, you're not looking for these deep lineup options, but considering the horrors of the injury situation right now, I set some grim lineups in some of the deep leagues I was in week 2. I have to be honest, both these guys have some appeal to me.
I think they certainly do, as well as Mike Williams. Williams is playing more and more. So was it Lazard? He was 2 for 4 for 11 yards this week, but he had an 82% snap share. Williams, who played 9 snaps in week 1, he had 1 catch on 1 target for 19 yards this week, but he played 65% of the snaps. So to me, it feels like we're going to see when they have 3 wide receivers on the field right now, it's going to be Wilson, Lazard, and Williams. I don't know that any of them is a natural slot guy. So somebody will kind of get forced into that role. Probably Lazard, and then Rodgers will throw it to him because, he knows him. Braylon Allen, on the other hand, I think he showed he can be counted on. So if something should happen, or if they need to give, if Hall gets dinged up and misses the rest of a game or something. But I don't think I'd bet on that type of production on a regular basis. But I do expect that now that they've seen him step up, and Aaron Rodgers, as long as Allen is good in pass protection, Rodgers will be okay with him being out there. So I would expect Allen to get 6 to 10 opportunities a game, just giving Breece Hall a break. I'm not, I don't know that you're going to see 6 or 8 points out of him, but he's big and he's fast. He's a pretty good pass catcher. So I'm not really keen on starting him in the flex. If I see him establish 3 or 4 weeks in a row where he's putting up, 8 points, then maybe I'm going to start changing my mind. But as of right now, I'm okay to start Lazard in a flex. I'm going to keep Allen on my bench.
Well, all I have to say is just like we all expected preseason, after 2 weeks, Baker Mayfield is QB1 and Derek Carr is QB2. I am taking the Jets in this one.
I am as well.
Well, that'll do it for us today. We shall be back on Friday with a preview of the rest of the week 3 lineup, as well as a recitation of what I imagine is going to be a 9-3 Thursday night football game, because that's what we're due at some point in time. But if you are looking for something to fill the rest of your midweek, what can the people do?
You can head on over to their favorite podcast platform. Hit that search button, type in the Fantasy Football Roundtable podcast. Hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. Well, and go. Aren't we we're on YouTube over on the Music City Drive-In page? Go watch it there, or at least put it on and listen to it there. Let us get enough so we can make $1.
There you go. So that'll do it for us today. We'll be back on Friday. Until then, you guys stay safe and enjoy Thursday night football.